on?
Yeah, thank you. I'm with Metro Vancouver, so
gotcha,
I was here.
gotcha. Okay.
Okay. So yeah, I'm a landscape architect with Metro Vancouver. So yeah, thank you.
Okay, good. So I think we are. Before we begin,
do you have me? It's Bruce Grail.
yes, I do have you, Bruce, and I do have you,
Excellent.
Richard. But I'm going to do this little party game before we turn the recording on. Because we have two new members of the committee, I'm going to ask all the existing members and the other people to just say one sentence about themselves. And then Bruce and Richard, you can each have 2 sentences if you like. So I'm going to start with seniority, the longest serving member of the committee, and that's Kirsty.
Oh, yeah, this is Kirsty. Sorry, what would you like me to?
Just
I've been on the committee forever.
Well, you can say you're a farmer again if you like.
Okay, I'm a farmer on the south side of the island.
Yeah, I live in Fairweather. And is Martin still around, or did he leave already?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, Martin has identified a conflict, so okay. I guess I've forgotten whether Betty or Brenda got on first, but what, Brenda, why not? You're on that side of my screen.
I think we got on at the same time, and which is not very long ago. I live over on Channelview, and I'm a lawyer. I am still practicing, sadly, not retired quite yet, but hope springs eternal. And yeah, I think that's enough about me. Okay, Betty?
Betty Morton. I'm retired and engaged in several of the municipal committees, and I live on the west side of the island, not far from Cape Roger Curtis.
Okay, and I'm Michael Penny. I'm a retired lawyer. It does happen, Brenda, just hang in there. Chairman of the committee, and I also live on the west side of the island in King Edward Bay. So, and Steph, tell us about yourself.
I'm the committee coordinator for all the 26 committees at the municipality. I'm the one harassing you.
Only 26 committees? Okay, Daniel?
And I'm Daniel Martin. I'm the manager of planning here with the municipality.
Okay, and Councillor Jurgensen, do you mind if I call you Alex, or if all of us call you Alex?
Oh yeah, no, not at all. I just put the councillor there in the title when I have it there on the screen, just so that people know who I am. But my name's Alex, and I am the council liaison for this committee.
Okay, thank you. Richard.
Hi, I'm Richard Underdown, one of the newest members to the APC. I live in Bowen Bay. I guess I'm a neighbor of both Michael and Betty's, maybe in between the two of you.
Yeah.
30-year resident, and yeah, very much looking forward to getting involved in the Planning Commission.
Yeah. Okay, and Bruce.
Good afternoon. I'm a 30-year resident of Bowen, roughly. I live on McGee Road, which is the part of the trail that goes around Killarney Lake. And we built our house here, 20 some odd years ago. I am a retired lawyer. And I'm also was mandatorily retired as a judge a few years ago. I was very much involved with the Parks and Recreation Commission back before the municipality was formed, and so that's enough about me.
Okay, my goodness, what a lot of expertise. But great. Okay, now, Steph, you can start the recording, and I will open the meeting. I didn't miss anyone, did I? No.
I'm just wondering who iPhone is, just because I'm having a hard time.
I don't see that.
Oh, okay.
Oh, it's me. It's me.
Oh, you're double dipping. Thanks, Betty. Sometimes it's okay. Well, yeah.
Okay, and Lydia, I accidentally got you to introduce yourself earlier, so that's why I didn't come back to you. Okay. So the meeting is open. Got it. Agenda. Can I have a motion to approve the agenda or comments on it? I saw Betty and then Brenda. All in favor? Okay. Good. I will talk a little bit about timing before we get into it. The first item is the Cape Roger Curtis matter. I would like to try and stick to the timing there so that we can deal with the 8 Arbutus Bay Road. That proponent has been working on this for a long time, and I'd like to move that one along for her. And then if possible, we can maybe go back to Cape Roger Curtis if we need to. Okay, adoption of minutes. I have one very minor change, Steph. It's just a little bit confusing on the opening remarks of the chair. The chair
Okay.
welcomed new members Brenda McLuhan and Betty Morton, Council Resource Councillor Alex Jurgensen. Can you change that to Betty Morton and Councillor Alex Jurgensen, comma, Councillor Resource? Otherwise, it makes it look like Betty's the Councillor Resource.
Okay, sure.
See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Subject to that one amendment, can I have a motion to adopt the minutes? That would be Brenda and Kirsty seconding. In favor? Great. Okay. There are no public comments, unless Lydia, you wanted to say something at this opportunity? Okay. So number 4, council referral, Cape Roger Curtis. Why we're here, I think. Dan, did you want to make a presentation and just orient us a bit about the background and what we're doing here?
Sure, I can do that. I have it just yeah. If you watch the committee of the whole that we had in end of February, this may look familiar, but I can do this sort of brief overview presentation to ground us where we are. And then I would love to have, yeah, a good discussion with the APC on this application. And Lydia, sorry, is here as well to help us with that. Let me find my screen. All right. So as the committee is no doubt aware, the municipality has received an application from Metro Vancouver for a proposed regional park at Cape Roger Curtis with an application to amend our land use bylaw and our official community plan over these 24 lots at Cape Roger Curtis, shown here in the dark green. So the proposal is to rezone the property to a park zone, so passive park with a zone variation over a portion of the site to permit supervised overnight use of up to 100 campsites. The proposal includes the following types of camping, following range of campsites, so a mix of walk, bike, and tent camping, group tent camping, car accessible tent camping, and tent cabins. And you can see on the side of the screen here the current proposed site plan showing where those different forms of overnight use would take place. So in terms of our existing bylaws, the OCP designates the entirety of the Cape Roger Curtis area as our rural. And I'll go through, I have some slides just talking about some of those policies that apply to the rural designation and other things as well. And the zoning, it's zoned rural residential 1 or RR1. Again, the whole of Cape Roger Curtis has that zoning. The rural residential zone allows a number of uses. It allows 1 dwelling per lot and 1 accessory dwelling or detached secondary suite per lot. So the 24 lots would or are permitted to have up to 48 total dwellings. We permit other things like residential guest accommodation. So it's a short-term rental use. We permit bed and breakfast use as a home occupation. Just for some context in terms of current overnight uses that are permitted in our zones. And then the land use bylaw has a section that's called uses permitted in all zones. So we permit in all zones bicycle paths, equestrian trails, pedestrian trails, or boardwalks, educational, interpretive signage, open space, and natural parks. So in my report to council, I say that this would mean that Metro Vancouver could operate a regional park similar to like the northern portion of Crippen Park around Killarney Lake without requiring a rezoning or OCP amendment. And in fact, some of the municipalities' parks operate under this clause, so they may be zoned residential, but we operate them as parks because they consist of natural parks or trails or open space. And so does the Bowen Island Conservancy, which owns 3 lots at Cape Roger Curtis and operates a nature reserve there, are able to do that without a rezoning, but under the rural residential 1 zone and that section of uses permitted in all zones. So in terms of OCP designation, so these are some objectives that relate to that rural designation. So for new members, our OCP is our official community plan, our guiding document. It's what council refers to when considering changes to the land use bylaw, is to look at our guiding document, the official community plan, and the different there's different sections of the OCP, and so the different land uses tend to have then objectives and policies that relate specific to that designation, and then other potential uses will have their own objectives and policies. But so in this case, this rural designation has these 4 objectives here. So objective 59, to provide lots of a size that help maintain and enhance the rural resource values of the island. Objective 60, to preserve and protect the land that contains environmentally sensitive plant communities, terrestrial herbaceous ecosystems, wetland riparian ecosystems, coastal ecosystems, or forest ecosystems that may be significant. I'm not necessarily going to read all of these, but just giving you a sense of what they are. Objective 61 is to protect the maintenance of tree cover, watersheds, wildlife habitat, viewscapes, and rural atmosphere. And objective 62 to protect watershed areas from incompatible land uses. Relevant to this application, our OCP has 2 specific policies related to campgrounds. So policy 189, campgrounds for recreational vehicles and trailer parks shall not be permitted within the municipality. So in the sense for this proposal, we would say that this meets policy 189. They're not proposing, or they're explicitly proposing campsites that don't involve recreational vehicles. And then policy 190, campgrounds serving the needs of backpackers and bicyclists may be permitted through commercial zoning regulation or temporary use permit on larger rural designated properties, which are or will be potentially be accessible by island trails. Campgrounds should be subject to regulations that relate to design and servicing requirements in order to minimize impacts on the environment, and should have on-site supervision. And then the OCP has some sections that relate specifically to Cape Roger Curtis. So objective 40 says to encourage the retention of the portions of Cape Roger Curtis in a natural state accessible to the public, including ecologically sensitive coastal bluffs and other sensitive ecosystems, such as Arbutus and Douglas fir woodland, portions of the shoreline, archaeological features, viewpoints, and significant marine objectives, and significant marine shorelines. And then objective 68, to continue to promote the public interest in the development of the Cape Roger Curtis lands. And then policy 152 is longer and relates to, it says, notwithstanding that Cape Roger Curtis has an approved subdivision plan. So that's the current lots where there's 59 10-acre lots. The municipality continues to promote the public interest of Cape Roger Curtis by encouraging the development of the site to conserve the majority of the coastline for ecosystem protection, especially the south-facing ecologically sensitive and unique coastal bluff. Where there are no adverse ecological impacts, develop public waterfront walking trails along the majority of the coastline connecting to the Cross Island Greenway. Protect environmentally sensitive areas and rare species. Cluster homes and any other structures in any new development to reduce land disturbance, maximize green space and the opportunity for trails, and facilitate transportation alternatives, and minimize and mitigate any negative impacts from Cape Roger Curtis development on the adjacent neighborhoods and on the island community as a whole. So these are sort of good guiding policy and objective for Cape Roger Curtis. And as I read through them, you kind of think about how they relate to this proposal before us. And then in terms of where we are in this rezoning process. So this application was introduced to council, and this is a little small and hard to read, but so I'll try to give you the high points. This application was introduced to council at the February 27th meeting. So we had a committee of the whole in the afternoon of the 27th. And then again, it was discussed at the council meeting that evening. And at that meeting, council referred the application to advisory committees, to the Islands Trust, to First Nations and BC Ferries and Vancouver Coastal Health, among others. And that's where we are in this process. Council also referred it to a public information meeting, and you may have participated in Metro Vancouver holding open houses and virtual open houses last week. And they also have an online feedback form that you can participate in. And so as we move forward, council referred us to bring the results of those referrals back to a committee of the whole. So that would be the next sort of council check-in. Council would then have to have a regular council meeting where they consider first reading of a bylaw. And then following first reading, we would again seek referrals. So we're required to refer to the Islands Trust, and we would seek referrals again to committees and further public engagement before council would have a consider second reading of a bylaw. So this timeline is showing like the necessary points for a timeline. And sometimes when I sort of read it out, people think that then it's set in stone, and I often say, well, no, council has the ability, you know, to interject additional steps in the process, but this is trying to show what has to happen. So after second reading, we are required to have a public hearing. That's the formal council meeting where they have the bylaw and everyone can come and speak directly to council on the proposed bylaw. Following a public hearing, council would consider third reading, and then we're required to refer an OCP amendment to the Islands Trust for approval, and then council again would consider fourth reading and adoption of the bylaw. And then this was that council recommendation from the February 27th meeting. So the referral to committees, the referral to agencies like the Islands Trust, Coastal Health, Bowen Island Conservancy, BC Ferries, Squamish First Nations. Council required the applicant to hold a public information meeting, and council directed staff to report back on results of this referral to a committee of the whole. And then this is just the recommendation that's in your agenda. So I'll stop sharing at this point to open it up for discussion.
Okay, and before I do that, Daniel, that's a pretty bare bones referral from council. What do you think they expect of us at this first opportunity to review the application?
So what I've been telling the committees as we do this referral, and I mentioned in the email yesterday, is council is looking for, I believe, and Councillor Jurgensen can correct me if or supplement, but the committee's initial thoughts on this application, initial discussion, and in part, I think looking for what does the committee need as this application moves forward, as you know, more discussions are held with Metro and with council. What does the APC say? You know, for us to provide a fulsome recommendation to council, we need to know whatever following information. So sort of this is this initial referral and initial time for you to say, for us to fully understand what we're recommending, we need certain information.
Okay, thank you. So
Currently unmuted.
Everybody's unmuted, I think. So just put your hand up if you want to ask Daniel or comment or whatever. And I see Alex first.
Currently unmuted.
I just want to add what Daniel was saying, that really it just is that whole, what do you need as a committee to decide this? Because it sounds like from the council meeting when we spoke to Metro Vancouver that they'll give us what we want, but to know, but only if we ask for it. And that was the first step that we took, was to ask the committees, well, what do you need to make that kind of informed work that the committees usually do? I recognize that that's not normally how we would do things. That seems to be the game Metro Vancouver is playing currently.
Okay. I see Betty
thanks.
now. Oh, Dan, did you want to comment on that?
The other thing, we did our referral with the Finance Advisory Committee on Monday. And one of the things that they also provided was they sort of said, these are our guiding principles in this application. I think that's helpful feedback too. So it's not specifics, but it says these are our key points that we are sort of using to guide our review of this application.
Okay, thanks, Daniel. Betty.
I just have a clarification question, Daniel, and thanks for all the documents you sent. It was a lot, but it was very helpful. The difference between actually going ahead with a rezoning for park and leaving the existing zoning are there differences in terms of permission to do the work, property tax implications? Are there any differences between those two zonings?
Right. So putting aside the campground question,
yeah.
For Metro Vancouver, what would the difference be? Like some of our parks we operate, as parks that are zoned residential, and we've had this long-standing goal of doing a project of actually zoning them all park. But part of that, from our point of view, is more just about like legibility. That that it's easier for residents to identify that these are parks, that they're zoned, that they, the designation matches what our parks plan says. But functionally, it doesn't make a difference. It would make the difference in terms of, accessory buildings or something. So if, like if you were to operate this as a regional park with trails, but under that RR1 zone, it would be challenging probably to build like a works yard like they have, or storage buildings or something like that might get challenging for how to be approved. But like Metro Vancouver as a regional government is the same as the Bowen municipality in that we don't pay property tax on the properties, so that wouldn't be affected. I know for like the Bowen Island Conservancy, it would make a big difference if their land was zoned park or not. They instead worked with the municipality. We placed a restricted covenant on their property so that they can't build dwellings, and that was to bring down their assessed value. Yeah.
Okay. Richard, I think I see you next.
Well, just related to that, when it comes to rezoning, Daniel, if policy 190 in the OCP says that there is to be no car camping, only walk-in or bicycle access, the rezoning request is specifically to allow camping and car camping. Can that rezoning go ahead if it is in contravention of the OCP?
That policy, and I should have been more explicit with that. Like that policy 190 is one of the key things that we see would need. So the application is for an OCP amendment as well. And so that policy, either that policy would be amended or an additional policy would need to be written that contemplates drive-in campgrounds.
I don't see any specific information in the tons of documentation, and maybe I just missed something, but I really don't see a comprehensive plan for parking as it relates to not only car camping, but the group camping, and really there could be as many as 80, 100 cars down there. Well, maybe that's a bit of an exaggeration, but certainly 60 or 70. I just don't see anything referencing how that is going to be handled.
Okay.
Or how Metro Park, Metro proposes handling that aspect of their campground.
Okay.
I don't know, Lydia, if you want to. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Totally voluntary here, but if you would like to respond
No, thank
to
you.
that.
I don't know whether it's helpful for me to take questions or just listen to comments. It's my first time with this committee, so it's just just understanding what the expectation is, and if it's helpful for me to provide any clarifications as we go along.
Okay. What we are doing, based on Daniel's advice, is working out issues that need to be considered. So at this point, if I could just make a note that the proposed parking arrangement, that's an issue that needs to be considered, and we'll work through these. If at any time you think, well, I just don't want to put you on the spot today, but just so you know what issues concern us. But if you do have a magic bullet answer, save us some time, step in. Someone else, please. No, nobody. I really want everybody, Brenda.
Well, yeah, I mean, I have a lot of things I want to say, but I guess I really just want to understand, going back to Betty's question, what then, putting aside the camping issue, I think what I heard you say, Daniel, is that the only difference between what a park would look like if this were rezoned to a park designation versus retaining the rural designation that it currently has, is that the proponent would be able, would have an easier job of building accessory buildings.
Yeah.
Am I right about that?
Yeah, so like Metro Vancouver recently expanded Crippen Park to buy the property end of Dorman. That property hasn't been rezoned, but it can be incorporated into Crippen Park. Like the trail network can expand, and that all happens.
Okay, someone else actually related to that, Daniel. What would be the requirements for a building permit insofar as you understand what Metro Vancouver wants to do?
In terms of, like in this proposal, so like the tent cabins or other structures, the same as I think any of our building permits, it meets building code. There's a comment in the report from Coastal Health about requirements for water and septic and how those would be handled in any sort of development that takes place.
Okay.
But for example, like Metro Vancouver in their work at Dorman Point are getting building permits for things like the stairway structures and the viewpoints, and have got building permits for other structures in Crippen Park.
Good, thank you. Betty, you have a follow-up?
I would defer to other people if somebody else wants to go ahead. I have a whole list of questions.
You know what? Why don't you get started, and it may inspire somebody else.
In the larger set of materials that Daniel sent out was more OCP information, and I was struck by so this is just a space holder for everyone. I was struck by how far out of date our OCP is. It was what we envisioned it to be like now, and it's so far off that I really feel like it's a waste of volunteer time, staff time, and council time to do anything with this proposal until we go back for an OCP review and revisit with the entire community what our vision for Bowen is going forward. And I'll say, because I've got the stage here, just related to that, a lot of the feedback and conversation I've had are about the impact of large numbers of people on a very small community, and the fact that cities like Vancouver have a density goal now. They're looking at infill all over the city and making it very dense. And so the flip side of that is they need to send people out for recreation, but we are by definition a very small island ecosystem. So there's nothing to address that in Metro Vancouver's new 2050 vision or whatever it is. But in Fraser Valley, so I want to read it to you. They say support impacted communities. Smaller communities immediately adjacent to popular recreation areas are finding it increasingly difficult to cope with traffic, parking demands, noise, other associated burdens of parkland. In cases where the region as a whole benefits from an established park, management of these issues should not be placed solely on the community, but should be a responsibility shared between the community and the Regional Parks Department. This should be reflected in the Regional Parks budget, and where parkland is provincial or crown, they go on. But I feel like to go forward at all, and I've asked these questions at public engagement, and there's no sign of intention to help Bowen out, never mind equally share the economic costs of the impact. So that would be one big piece of information I'd need to see to feel comfortable supporting the proposal.
Okay, related to that, I would like to see information concerning traffic flow. And I don't know, Daniel, do we have baseline traffic information for, say, White Sails Drive or?
I believe Public Works tracks it sometimes. We do periodic tests. Metro Vancouver currently has a
That's something on the go, I understand, right,
Yeah.
Lydia? Yeah.
Yeah, that's correct. We're looking at trip generation, so the amount of trips that the project would generate. And as part of a bigger traffic impact assessment, we'd look to existing volumes as well.
Okay.
Thank you.
And that reminds me, by the way, Daniel, thank you very much for all that information about Cape Roger Curtis in the 2008, 2009. Boy, that brought back some memories. And I think one of the things that we need to do is consider how much of that is, I mean, some of it's clearly irrelevant to what's happening now, but some of it, like, for example, the geology hasn't changed. So that report is useful. So I think again, that's maybe our own task. Anyway, I need to hear from someone else.
Okay, well, I might as well speak up as I always do. A couple of things. My great grandfather bought a lot of property on the south side of the island over 100 years ago. He bought it with the expectation that it would be a part of Metro Vancouver one day, and that it would develop like that. So I'm saying over 100 years ago, there was an expectation that there would be a lot of population here, and things have been very slow to develop over here. And only really in the last 35 years has there really been much change, maybe 40 years. And there's been a lot more people on the island. A lot of the people on this call have been those people. And we had an opportunity when the Hoes tried to develop Roger Curtis years ago, and they got completely screwed over by the council. They had a lovely plan with a park that really would have only been for Bowen Islanders. And the council turned it down at the last minute. They went in the opposite direction and did what they're allowed to do. And I think that all I'm hearing from a lot of people on the island is, let's see if we can do that again and prevent anything from happening here. And it really, it appalls me. It really does. Okay. And I think that there are some real issues with the park, and traffic and the ferry are one of them, or a couple of them. And I think that instead of trying to find all of the ways that we can say we don't want this at all and keep them out, and we don't want anybody from Vancouver, maybe we should think and be a little bit open-minded and think about what are the real issues and deal with them. And I do agree that the ferry transportation and White Sails Drive traffic is a huge issue for the people, all of the people on the island for the ferry, and the people on the west side of the island for White Sails Drive. And maybe we can try and focus on, getting past the big barriers and not putting a big frickin' wall like Trump across our island and try and keep people out. That's really what we're doing. It's ridiculous.
Yeah,
anyway.
Well, okay. Well, thank you, Kirsty. I'm never quite sure what you think.
No, I know.
But that's great. I think this kind of discussion is very, very important. And so we do need a response from BC Ferries. I understand this has been referred to them. And we do need a response from Interlink. Not Interlink, sorry, that's my other job, TransLink, because I understand it's been referred to them as well. Richard and Bruce, you signed up, so you better talk. Richard.
Well, I have a question about the environmentally sensitive areas that have been defined by the studies that have taken place. It doesn't really say quite clearly why they are considered environmentally sensitive, if they're coastal bluff or if they're endangered red listed species found in a wetland. They're detailed on the map, but I guess my question to Lydia and to Metro would be, what do you envision doing to protect those areas within the park? How do you stop people from transgressing across an area that's defined as environmentally sensitive? Do you envision putting fences up around these areas? Is it going to be signage? Do we cross our fingers and hope? I'd like more on that.
No, well, thank you for the question. So in terms of what's in some of the environmental areas, there are a number of restrictive covenants on the site, and depending on the nature of the individual covenant, they'll be protecting different things. So some of them are coastal bluffs, and the reindeer lichens, things like that, are very important in those areas. One particular covenant relates to an ephemeral wetland, so there's no doubt frogs and protected amphibians in there. There's also a coastal covenant, so 30 meters from the coast as well. So there's a number of different reasons that covenants are in place. And then the site as a whole, we just had new terrestrial ecosystem mapping for the whole site, and the whole site is, I think it's 93% red and blue listed forest. So all the Douglas fir forest is sensitive as well. So that's just a little bit of an overview in terms of the ecosystems there. On the kind of how we protect, you know, those sensitive ecosystems, there's a number of reasons. There's never a kind of one size fits all approach. So first off, in some situations, we can be careful where we lead people. So kind of keeping people away from those areas. And then you can also look at the kind of the three, what you can kind of call the 3 E's. So I think of that as engineering, education, and enforcement. So engineering sounds a little bit like a heavy intervention, but this can just mean, you know, having a boardwalk or something that allows people to have an experience, but doesn't allow people to kind of impact or stray off trail in a situation. So creating a viewpoint, so you're letting somebody experience what it's like to kind of be near the coastal bluff, but not letting them kind of off that little zone. The education is that, and that can either be in person, so our park interpreters kind of taking a school group out on site. We often find that a lot of school kids, you know, you create the stewards of tomorrow if you educate them. That can also be, there's a signage component, so that's kind of in-person education, and there's kind of signage, and the signage can be positive, kind of educating people about things, or it can be kind of keep off. So there's a few different ways that message can go. And then there's also the enforcement. So our operational park staff are all able to enforce Metro Vancouver's bylaw. So that enables them to ticket people if somebody has an off-leash dog, that type of thing, in any of the, you know, so if a dog's straying on the ecosystems, or if people are straying off trail or foraging, that type of behavior. So I hope that helps answer that question or give you some clarity. Thanks.
Okay. Bruce, I'd like to hear from you.
Well, I have these comments to offer. I'm neither opposed to the park, but nor am I in favor of it. The way that I guess it's come on so quickly. And I know that I speak for many of my friends. We see a lot of development that's going on this island already. You know, there are probably half a dozen active developments going on, not the least of which is mid-island around the lake there, and particularly on the other side of the lake. So you know, I have some caution and some worry. I see what the Conservancy has done. I see that, you know, no dogs are permitted on trails, and people aren't permitted to walk down in eco-sensitive areas that have been identified by the Conservancy, and they have somebody there from time to time who guards that and ensures that that it happens. I see what Metro, and I'm not sure how this whole thing came together in the very beginning, and I think if I understood that, I might have a bit more empathy for it. But it just seems to have been dropped on us, as I see it, out of the blue, and on Metro's terms. And so and I think many people on the island react to that in a quite a negative way. So I want to listen. I want to hear what a number of the other committees have on specific issues that have been assigned to them: transportation, ferries. I can't, you know, I live, as I said, at the end of the trail going around Killarney Lake. So I see particularly in the summertime, the number of people that get off tour buses and walk around the lake. I've run across groups of, I won't say hundreds, but very close to. So
Okay.
what, you know, I translate that to what Metro did and is doing at Dorman Point. I really don't like the sensitivity to the environment there. I think too many trees were taken down. I think it was just like a heavy hand. There's a big
Okay.
wide trail that goes in there that just wasn't necessary.
Okay.
So I worry about things and issues like that, and happy to work with Metro if we can work these things out. But I'm not a. Okay, I'll stop
Okay.
there.
Well, let me try, and since we're running out of time on this particular issue on this go around, let me try and capture what we have said so far. Steph, are you ready to type away? So
Sorry,
the
I have some typed, some things typed.
okay. Well, I'll tell you what. Okay.
You go.
Okay. So we are requesting information and answers to the following questions. The first is the consequences of a rezoning to park or a not rezoning to park. I'm curious about that one myself.
I feel
what
like that got
aspects-
answered, didn't it?
Sorry?
Did that question get answered?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, we satisfied that. You know, one of the things even though it's answered, one of the things that's going to happen here is that our information is going to be shared with all the other committees and with council.
Right.
And I think it's important that we identify these issues to assist them, just as I hope to get assistance from other.
Sure.
Okay, so yes, Brenda.
If I might just elaborate on that one, I think maybe we'd like to understand the benefits associated with a rezoning to a park versus allowing a park to proceed with the existing zoning.
Okay, you know what? I like that formulation better, Steph, if you could, makes more sense. Okay.
Yeah.
My little one, what aspects of the Metro Vancouver plan require building permits?
Okay.
We recommend council at least consider a renewal of the OCP.
I think the point on that one was consider a renewal of the OCP. I don't want to put words into Betty's mouth, but I think she said prior to considering this rezoning application. Is that right, Betty?
Okay, so stated. I have something about the policy related to assisting. What is Metrovan's policy related to assisting small communities in dealing with its regional visitors?
Okay, my note on that was that Betty read a sort of policy and is asking for some kind of commitment to that being implemented here.
Okay, yeah, I'm trying not to make these demands. I'm trying to make them issues that have to be dealt with.
Okay.
Although they may become demands, I will see. Or not. Kirsty, don't worry too much.
So what the wording, what is the policy? Sorry. And
I had request Metrovan to establish a policy related to assisting small communities in dealing with visitors from the region. I think that captures it.
like financial assistance or?
Well, just policies that may include finance, may include.
Okay.
No,
I like what Venice did. You know, it costs you 65 euros to go to Venice now. No, I don't. I'm kidding. We need to
I'm
insist
so
on
sorry. Assisting small communities. And what was the end of the sentence?
in dealing with regional visitors.
Thank you.
We have to insist on a response from BC Ferries and from TransLink.
Response.
Yeah, they've been requested, and I'm concerned that they will just ignore us. Richard, and then Brenda.
Just on that point with BC Ferries, at the open house, head of Metro Parks, Neil, I'm sorry I didn't catch his last name, said that he was in discussion with BC Ferries about priority boarding for Bowen Islanders.
Oh,
And I think that's, I told him that's something our transportation committee has been working on for the last 15 years without success. And he said, well, we're Metro Parks. And
yeah. I mean, this may be maybe an opportunity to get some improvement of some things that were troubled even before. Anyway, Brenda.
That's a good one. How's that going to work on the Bowen side would be my question about that. Yeah, I just going back again, I don't want to speak for Betty, but I think I saw her shaking her head with the idea of Metro Vancouver talking about what they do for small communities who are affected by the park. I think we want to know what they're going to do for Bowen Island with respect to the effects of this park if it were to go ahead. Not just
Okay.
small communities. We want some specifics about
Okay.
Bowen Island.
Why don't we change the wording of small communities to Bowen Island? That was the small community I had in mind.
And in the interest of time, I'm just going to chime in with one other point that I think is quite important with a lot of the people that I've spoken with, and that is the loss of tax revenue that will stem from this decision. Daniel makes mention of $185,000. That is, you know, we're an island with no commercial tax base. So that's approximately 3% of our total budget. That cost is going to be borne by everyone else on the island.
Okay, so consequences of a loss of the property tax revenue. Steph, details as to why, quote, environmentally sensitive areas, close quotes, are thus identified.
Sorry, details why they're identified or how they're
Sorry.
going to be protected?
No, I just, what does it take for an area to be identified as environmentally sensitive? I don't know. Oh my goodness. Related to that, consider strategies for protecting environmentally sensitive areas.
I think that's the concern is they've been identified. How are they going to be protected?
Okay, but I'm kind of curious to know why. Are they forest? Are they foreshore? Whatever. I will tell you, I have some personal experience with an environmental covenant in my neighborhood and some developments that offended it. And I was told when I raised it with the municipality, admittedly at a previous council, previous staff, the municipality did not enforce these covenants. In any event, Brenda, once again.
Yeah, I'm not sure that I mentioned this one before, but there hasn't been a comprehensive all-season species inventory taken in that area. And also a related issue to that would be identification of habitat used by any endangered or rare species.
Okay. Did you get that, Steph?
Please say it again.
Okay, so consider what did you call it? It's a habitat and
a consideration of an all seasons species inventory to identify any rare or endangered species, as well as identifying their habitats within the proposed park area.
Okay, and I was interested in Lydia's comment about enforcement and handing out tickets. Would that be the responsibility of Bowen Island's bylaw officers, or I'm not sure what the authority for those tickets would be?
No, on regional park land, our park staff are peace officers and can enforce regional parks by law.
Okay, and Betty, sorry, I didn't see your hand up there earlier.
The one that, because we cut our time off, that didn't hit the agenda, but I thank Bruce for mentioning it. I feel really strongly that there needs to be some kind of joint management agreement between Metro Parks and Bowen Municipality. And that's based on being horrified about the development at Dorman Point and being previously highly frustrated and disappointed about the performance of Metro at Davies Orchard. And I feel like, as she said, we don't have any policing, we don't have any input into how and any local knowledge in terms of how these things should happen or
Okay, and
they are.
how would you frame that as a request for information?
I would like to see a conversation about joint management of.
Okay, consider joint management of the park.
Yeah.
Okay, now why don't we just park all that? Sorry, because Amico is, I think, still waiting in the background. Deal with her, and then we'll come back to Steph's draft and try and conclude something. Okay, is that all right with everybody?
Oh, let me just get Martin.
Yeah, Martin has a conflict that he disclosed in private to Steph, and the two of them concluded that it was not appropriate for him to be at this meeting. This portion of the meeting. I will emphasize that he's not working on this particular initiative. Okay, is Martin back or?
No, but maybe Daniel, is Daniel going to present? Or?
Yeah, I can present. Do you want me to start and then Martin will join?
Yeah, and Amico, did you want to say something as well?
I didn't really have anything too much to add. I
Okay,
will
well,
say that we actually I will make a couple points. We are doing more an updated environmental assessment, and it did identify a channelized stream, which was actually a ditch right beside the road, current road that we have, and so that has slightly, we need to alter some of our plans as a result of that. So I just wanted to mention that.
Okay, thank you. And by the way, thank you very much for hosting the site visit. I found it very, very useful, even though it was raining like. Okay, Daniel.
Okay. All right, so this is then another rezoning application and now a bylaw, so bylaw 598 to amend the land use bylaw. So we're rezoning at 8 Arbutus Bay Road, which is on the south coast of Bowen Island. It's sort of just below the golf course when looking on a map. It's about a 7.2 hectare property, so getting close to 20 acres in size. And the rezoning application is to permit up to 7 residential lots, a 2.89 hectare park dedication, and a small common property. And you can see the overall development plan that's proposed here, where 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 lots clustered in the southern part of the lot. Oops, sorry, and then 1 larger lot on the north side to capture as well an existing horse pasture that is on that part of the site. So for the new members and a refresher for the existing members, the APC considered this application at your December 13th meeting. And so at that meeting, you recommended support for the rezoning application with comments. The Strata Road provide access to the sea or an ocean viewpoint. Staff seek an appropriate engineer's report on size and location of common septic field. A housing agreement on the affordable unit on lot 3 being in effect for as long as practical, that the 15% of gross floor area as affordable housing be clarified, and that public parking be considered based on the nature of the reserve. So I took that recommendation and the recommendations from the Parks and Trails and the Housing Advisory Committee to council at the February 27th meeting. And at that, as well as the draft bylaw, and at that meeting, council gave first reading to the amendment bylaw that I'll go over in a sec. They referred the bylaw to the Islands Trust, the Advisory Planning Commission, so where we are tonight, the Housing Advisory Committee, and the Parks and Trails Greenways Advisory Committee. Council authorized staff to enter negotiations with the applicant for a cash in lieu contribution to fulfill the affordable housing policy. So I know that was a topic of conversation at our December meeting about the affordable housing contribution. And what the Housing Advisory Committee eventually recommended is that they recommended that instead of a on-site affordable housing unit, that it should be a cash in lieu contribution to better match our housing policy, which seeks housing accessible to transit or in the Cove. And so they felt a better use was to have a cash contribution that could contribute to housing in Snug Cove. Council required an updated environmental assessment of the proposal, which Emiko said is underway. And council required the applicant to update neighbors on the status of their application. So that was instead of having an additional, so Emiko and the applicants have held an open house as well before coming back to council. And so rather than requiring an additional open house, council required that the neighbors be updated prior to second reading. So in terms of the overall rezoning process, so this application was introduced to council in November. We did those committee referrals and open house in December and January. First reading was given in February. We're now doing a second round of referrals before consideration of any second reading, a public hearing, third reading, and then adoption. In terms of bylaw 598 that council gave first reading to, so it would create a comprehensive development zone for the site. So it would delineate which areas are park. So that area 1, area 2 being zoning for a single lot, and then area 3 being zoning for the balance of the 6 remaining lots. And then this would be sort of the specifications of that bylaw. So would have a maximum lot coverage, and then as recommended by the Housing Advisory Committee, a maximum floor area of all buildings on a lot, and in part that that permitted floor area then drives the affordable housing contribution as being 15% of the additional floor area. The number of dwellings are as shown, so area 3 having 6 dwellings and area 2 having 1. And then the other piece is that the setbacks are slightly reduced from our normal SR2 or rural zones, and in part that comes from the applicant's desire to have the housing sited closer to the road, the strata road that would go through the site, and further away from the setback to the sea. So the report that went to council had some discussion points that have high levels for, so the affordable housing contribution. So the council recommendation is to seek a cash in lieu contribution. There's a maximum floor area established in the bylaw with an additional amount for development of an accessory residential area. So that's something the Housing Advisory Committee has been recommending, is that that zones have a maximum floor area and then have an additional amount, essentially a bonus if people provide build secondary suites. So this came from the Parks, Trails, Greenways Advisory Committee is looking for increased park size around Echo Bay, and so that's captured in the bylaw. So essentially capturing the that bank around Echo Bay that we saw on our site visit. The Parks and Trails recommended a shoreline covenant, and so the applicant is supportive and is developing mapping for a 30-meter covenant. 50% protection. So again, the Parks and Trails pointed to our conservation development policy, which seeks that up to, a goal of 50% of the lot be protected. And so there's a proposed park dedication for, I believe it's around 40% of the lot. And then the applicant is proposing the shoreline covenant, and then as well as a covenant on a portion of the lot 3 to the north to protect it, a portion of it from further development. And then finally, the park dedication. So the applicant's desire is that the park dedication be actually transferred to a conservancy such as the Bowen Island Conservancy. And council has referred the application to the Bowen Island Conservancy to have a discussion about a potential park dedication. And we'll continue to work with the Parks and Trails Greenways Advisory Committee as well on that. So that was the end of my presentation, and then I'll open it for discussion.
Okay, yeah. Before others speak, one thing I found fascinating in your report, Daniel, was the response of the other committees and the issues they raised, some of which we had also raised ourselves, but it was clear that everybody was looking at the same parcel of land. Anyone have any questions or comments? Brenda.
I like the changes that have been made. I especially like the fact of the increased beach access as well as the shoreline covenant. I think those are very important improvements. And so I would commend the proponent for that. I do have a question for Daniel. I also think, it's a good idea, the cash in lieu donation towards affordable housing. My question is, what happens to that money? How does that actually get used for affordable housing?
So we have an affordable housing reserve. So the contribution would go into that reserve, and then it would, ultimately be up to council to then disperse. The first contribution to that reserve came, I believe, last year through a rezoning on Smith Road. So previously there hasn't been money in the reserve, so there's not at this point, a policy for how it would be dispersed. I know that there are some proponents of affordable housing projects in Snug Cove, and you could imagine them seeking grants for the amount.
Yeah, okay. I think we'd love to get involved in developing that policy, but that belongs to another committee. Anyone else? Richard.
How is that amount calculated? What is it based on?
So the one answer would be, well, we can calculate the increase in floor area as a part of the rezoning. And I think I have that calculation in the report, I believe.
You didn't actually arrive at a suggested amount in the report that I saw.
No, there's not a suggested amount. And I know that that is something the Housing Advisory Committee is interested in discussing as well. Before getting into sort of the details exactly how much it would be, we wanted to get council direction that was the direction the council wanted to take as an approach before getting into what that number would be. But clearly saying, okay, this is how it would be calculated based on the increase in floor area. I will say that the tricky part, I think, of our affordable housing policy. So some people, I think, would look at the number and say, well, it costs this much per square foot to build. And so the contribution should be, the amount of floor area times the building cost. But the challenge, I think, in sort of fairness and equity in our policy is that what we have done in other projects is require that amount of floor area be built as rental housing that has a maximum rent set out in a covenant, but that essentially the owner, the developer, rents it out and receives the rent revenue. So for example, the Bowen Island pub in their rezoning, they built, I believe it's 4 apartment units above the pub that they use as staff housing that are governed by a housing agreement that they can only rent for certain rental rates. But they do keep the revenue. So then part of sort of the calculation of the cash in lieu would be, well, what's the value difference between building it and renting it at a reduced rate? And yeah.
Okay, interesting. Betty, one of the problems with this format is I can't point to you to say that I saw that you had your hand up. But yes, you had a question or a comment? Are you muted, Betty?
Oh, there we are.
Thanks.
I wanted to say thank you and appreciation both to our planning staff and to Miko's family. I feel like it's a really nice solution. I really appreciated the detailed hike through and around and up over the property and really understanding what a gift it is to the community. And I hope that it's treated respectfully and that over the long term that everybody's happy with it. It looked great to me.
Okay, good. And Kirsty, I think you were at the site visit as well, weren't you? Well, you know the land very well anyway.
I do know the land very well. It's yeah, I think it's actually underutilization of the site, but anyway, that's just my thoughts on it. A large site and having to give 50% of it for park seems really overkill.
Yeah, I think that's an island-wide policy these days. In any event,
It just came in the last council.
Yeah, well. Council gets to make council decisions. We get to advise. So we passed a motion supporting this development the last meeting. I would entertain a motion that we continue to support the development and in particular support the changes that the proponent has made to their plan. That sound where we're headed?
There are
Yeah.
some, we just, whereas the, amendments to the original proposal have been demonstrated by the applicant, therefore be it resolved that the committee support the rezoning application,
Why don't we say continues to support?
continues to support.
Yeah, did Brenda, are you moving that or?
Well, I just had a quick question. I think that Emiko mentioned that it's actually going to be revised a little bit because of some because of the environmental inventory work that's being done. Is that correct? So does that mean that we'll be getting a revised?
Yeah,
Over
just,
revised?
it's not, I don't think that material, but for example, our existing map didn't show where the proposed parking was for the park and also the septic field. And we're just trying to scope where that is, because if it's a septic field, has to be a number of meters away from the ditch. So that's making us think we actually might need to move it onto just south of the road, which is right now designated as park, and then give up a higher area, the same kind of equivalent area on the top of the property in lot 3. So we have to get the engineers out there just to make sure that that can work, because otherwise we have to run our septic all the way to the top of lot 3 for the 4 lower lots. So it's just sort of some detail, which, and I understand, I think from Daniel, these are details that would more likely come in the rezoning rather than the subdivision, rather than really the overall theme of the rezoning.
Okay. Good. Yeah, I don't think because we support the current plan, that doesn't commit you to not making improvements to it if you want. Okay.
I think
so-
I'll just say to Brenda, if you were, or the APC wants to see it again, then make that in your recommendation.
Oh, okay. I think we
because
do.
sometimes, the APC doesn't want it, you say, well, we're happy, and if it tweaks, we're happy with the direction it's going and we don't need to see it again. But
Okay.
if you say you would like to have it come back, then maybe include that in your recommendation.
Okay, I just assumed it would come back. So thank you for that, Daniel.
Which screen are you seeing?
Yours, whereas the amendments.
Your
made to
Word
the-
doc.
Yeah, I've got lots of screens, Michael. You've seen the Word doc, okay, because it's showing in the other one. Okay, so whereas the amendments made to the zoning application as presented at its March 14th, 2023 meeting are aligned with recommendations made by the commission.
Therefore, be it resolved that the APC continues.
No,
with
it's
an S.
subjunctive.
Continues to support 8 arbitrary application and requests that it be referred to the APC. Back to the APC. Just leave it at that. Yeah.
Oh, maybe say something like once, or request that any amended plan or something like that.
Oh, okay.
So it's clear that what you want to see again is you
Sure.
want to see.
Okay. Well, why don't we go back to the whereas the amendments made to the rezoning application as presented are aligned with recommendations, and the proponent advises that further amendments.
If they're significant, or do you want it if it doesn't really change much at all?
Okay.
Well, I think we'd probably want to see it to know that. I mean, otherwise we're getting someone else to make a judgment call. I think it's just easier to have it come back. You know, if it doesn't have very many, any significant changes, we're not gonna have to spend much time on it. But it would be nice to see it.
Okay, so whereas amendments made are aligned, whereas the proponent advises that further amendments may be made due to the results of an environmental assessment, therefore be it resolved. The APC continues to support the application and requests that any amendments be referred back to the committee. for
Okay.
comment.
Is the environmental assessment the only motivation for, because I think there was something about parking.
Yeah, there's obviously some issues with some of our neighbors that we need to work out. So, and obviously we need to take into consideration the result of that.
Okay, why don't we just end that phrase there, Steph, after made? And that'll cover it.
Okay,
I will say, as a result of the site visit, I saw how precipitous the descent into Echo Bay is. Oh, well, that's a different issue. Good. So is somebody prepared to make that motion? Brenda, I saw your hand. And sorry, who was that? I heard somebody else speak. Was that Bruce? Seconded by Bruce. Okay. I call the vote. Those in favor? Was there anyone against? I don't have the whole screen here. Okay, great. Thank you. And
you.
Martin, we're going to excuse you again unless there's anything further you want to consider.
Thank you. Yeah.
Don't sound so
All right.
relieved.
Oh, no. I'll
the
go
sun
make
is
dinner.
still shining.
Okay. Well, thanks very much, Martin, and thank you for.
Thank you. Okay.
Thanks,
Bye.
Mike.
Okay, Steph.
Yeah, I'm ready to share screen on that one too, unless people want to
Yeah,
have more discussion.
I think that might focus the discussion a bit.
Okay. Okay.
But we will have to talk about what we have done. And what I mean by that is, we'll get it on the screen and I'll ask people
so
what they think.
Can you see it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was starting.
Oh, wow.
The story of the recommendation. I was starting a whereas type of scenario up here. That was sort of what happened with Michael. So I will.
I'm not sure we need that at all. I think the point I wanted to make is that these are requests for information brought forward by individual members of the committee. I think it would be a mistake to require everybody to agree to all of them. Because it would restrict the comprehensiveness of it. So that's the kind of language I think the motion should, or not even a motion really, but it would be that, yeah, so individual members of the, why don't you start off by saying individual members of the Advisory Planning Commission.
Okay, so but it's going to be formed as it was moved in.
Yeah, just start off by saying individual members of the Advisory Planning Commission brought forward the following issues, questions, and requests for information regarding, et cetera, and then you can delete the last phrase in before the colon there. Whoops. Okay, now, does everything follow appropriately from that, folks?
Okay. Information regarding the consequences of rezoning or not rezoning in an effort to understand the benefits associated.
Okay. maybe I just ask generally, why don't we all read through them and see if there's any changes that, for clarity, I think more than disagreement or agreement. Oh, Bowen, capitalized Bowen Island. Oh my goodness.
And I'd like to add another one, which is it has consideration being given to an alternate access to the park rather than
Oh.
by sales.
How about through Fairweather?
Yeah.
Yeah, I it's funny because I meant to raise that myself. I will. Ever since this came up, I've been visiting Cape Roger Curtis way more often than I used to, and I used to visit at least once a week. So right there's a density of traffic that I'm causing. But I did walk along DC Road, which is basically an access to the Cape that's just gated. And also discovered, Daniel, there's a park up there, a municipal park, but I couldn't find it. I just saw it on a map. But anyway, that's good.
Do people need me to scroll up? Or are we good? Or scroll down?
Yeah,
Scroll down?
I can't see the bottom.
Actually, yeah. Those things that I guess we can request, really at the end of the day, the council, better them than me, has to make a decision. And that decision would, yes, Betty.
Would people be open to where we ask them to talk to BC Ferries to actually get broader than that because to me, one of the biggest barriers to this project is getting from Vancouver to Bowen. I think it has to be way bigger than BC Ferries because quite honestly, they're not going to budge. So can we somehow open that question?
Okay, so
We don't-
request a response for BC Ferries and Translink. Maybe like
And
request alternate
water taxi or whatever
Oh,
option.
okay.
Yeah.
Request
alternate forms
regarding
of
transit.
water travel.
How we're going to get from the mainland to the island is my.
Actually, the transportation issue does go beyond BC Ferries and Translink. I remember one of the councillors said something about if there's going to be a shuttle bus, maybe it should leave downtown Vancouver.
Exactly. That's what I'm trying to say. And or there was also talk about when we used to have the commuter water taxi, that something could work that would benefit both commuters and park visitors, but
Yeah.
that needs to be explored. I mean, I've been going back and forth on the ferry and it's full right now, every day in the middle of the day. And this is March.
Jeez.
Okay, so
Requested alternate forms of water travel and alternate
why'd you
document.
say travel to the island?
Yeah. It can be simple, but it needs to be from the mainland to Bowen.
Yeah, I'd like to see, sorry, I'd also like to see us adding something, and I don't have the exact wording for it, but the thought is that there needs to be a lot more public consultation with the residents of Bowen Island before consideration is given to this rezoning application. And I say that because what I've heard is the deadline here being in May. And I just think there are so many issues associated with this that doesn't seem to be a very realistic deadline.
Can that be captured around this? Consider an OCP update prior to consideration.
Yeah. Alex, what I sense from council is a desire to be thoughtful and systematic and take your time. From both the people, the councillors who I perceive to be in favor of the proposal and those who are concerned about it.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a lot of safeguards in the procedure, Brenda. I wouldn't
Okay.
be surprised if we don't see this. We will see this 3 or 4 times. And there's a requirement for public hearing.
Okay, well, maybe it doesn't need to be said then,
Yeah,
but
I'm a little concerned.
I-
We don't tell council how to do their council business. If you know what I mean.
no, but I think that.
Council's asking for the committee's feedback.
Okay.
I think it's fair to say that I know I've heard from many people that I know that they want there to be more opportunities to provide their input on this.
Okay.
Because it has the potential to be such a to bring about a lot of change on this island. So and if council is considering the same thing, this will only reinforce that. So I guess I'm not really seeing the harm
Okay.
in it, as long as we say it in a way that doesn't sound dictatorial. But that I share that concern of not wanting to seem that way, and that's certainly not my intention.
Okay, no, we can recommend that council can,
Adequate,
why don't
use the
we
word
say,
adequate, Michael, be fine, adequate time.
no, you know what, recommendation that council continue the thorough consultation with the community such that the community has sufficient time and opportunity. To express its views.
Thank you, Michael. That's absolutely perfect.
Okay, yeah, I was trying to avoid recommendations, but we seem to have slipped into them. But really what I want to do is give council a list of things to consider.
I think that's a nice way to go about it.
Yeah, so can we start? And Bruce, did you have a comment before we go through them one more time?
I can't read them.
Okay, I can make it bigger, Bruce, and so I will scroll down. My apologies.
I could have spoken up earlier.
Okay.
Is that more readable, Bruce?
No. No,
You
I'm
know
sorry.
what I can-
Well, we're going to read them out anyway for Alex.
Okay.
So,
Read them out.
Michael, can I interject one additional point, please?
please.
Can there be some clarification of how the existing municipal parklands at the Cape are going to be, the management of those parklands are going to be affected or potentially affected by?
Yeah, there
Metro
are
Park.
so many issues, aren't there?
Sorry, Richard, I didn't catch that.
Well, we have an extensive, so I guess clarification as to how the current municipally managed parkland at the Cape can be or will be or may be affected by the Metro Parks plan. I had heard somewhere, and maybe one of the other panel members has some information on this, but that there was some consideration being given that BIM hand over management of those parklands to Metro. Does anyone else?
I had heard that one of the things under consideration was, the foreshore park at Cape Roger Curtis, that be managed by Metro, but it was just an idea that came up. I don't think anything formal has happened on that. But can we go through these things and make sure they are considerations? I'm a little concerned about making them recommendations when we're not unanimous or
Daniel has his hand up.
and we're not. Sorry, who does?
Daniel.
I can't. Oh, Daniel. Oh, yeah. Sorry, couldn't see at the top there.
I just wanted to speak to Richard's question. I know that when we released closed motions in December, that one of those was about transferring municipal trails and the parkland to Metro Vancouver. But for that to take place, that would be a sort of a lengthy process that would involve like notification in terms of disposal of municipal land. So it was sort of something that had been discussed by the previous council. but not that any decision has
Okay.
been made or that, a transfer is necessarily part of it. I know at the Finance Advisory Committee meeting yesterday, they were discussing, is it advisable or potential for transfer of the road system that would go through the park, like that portion of Cape Drive? Is that something the municipality would want to transfer to Metro Vancouver in terms of removing, need for maintenance and upkeep?
Okay.
So that was a discussion as well that I think will take place through this, but not a decision point.
Okay. And I see Alex's hand up.
Currently unmuted.
Yes, just to add that I think the resolution being referenced here is resolution number 22-331. I don't have access to the resolution offhand. If someone else does, I just thought I'd throw out the number.
Sorry, 22-331. You're asking, and that is, sorry, is this the referral to this committee, Councillor?
No, I believe that was the one where they were from the closed council meeting where they were discussing the transfer of lands to Metro
Okay.
Parks.
I'm not going to be able to pull that up right now.
Okay,
Well,
but it
Has that
I know
motion,
you might have that at hand.
does exist.
has that
Alex,
motion
you're
been
up again?
quashed?
Alex, did you have something to add? Your hand is up. Okay, so somebody's dog wants input. Why not? I tell you, dogs and parks, big deal. Can we go to the top of the list again then, Steph, so that I can change them all to considers? Okay, so the first one will be consider the consequences of rezoning or not rezoning.
You're asking council to consider.
That's right. Next one would be.
Sorry, but I'm sorry, what is the effort to understand the benefits then? Like, I
Benefits
thought,
to the island.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I think we need to leave the benefits in there, the benefits for the island, correct?
so the sentence doesn't make sense anymore.
Okay, consider the consequences of rezoning or not rezoning in an effort to understand. Really, you want benefits in there, the effects or the
I think there was a request for information.
It's the impacts.
yeah, its impact is what we're looking for, right? In order to understand the impact associated with rezoning of the park. Okay.
Sorry to flog a dead horse here, but I am also wanting to understand what the benefit would be to Bowen for the rezoning. So maybe we can say, understand the impacts, round bracket, and in particular, any benefits, close bracket.
Okay. That makes sense. And I don't know if there's defects, but we'll leave it at that. And then consider seeking information or consider obtaining information regarding the requirement of Metro Vancouver. Okay. And then the next one, consider an OCP update. You can take the recommendation that council out.
I wonder if it makes sense to read each one of these aloud after we do this for the benefit of Councillor Jurgensen and also for Bruce if he's still unable to read it.
Yeah, we'll read them all aloud. And I don't know if the order is maybe not.
Steph, can you increase the size of the text? Which would solve it.
Absolutely, absolutely, I will. And yeah, let's do I'll read the sentence and Michael, you can correct it.
Okay.
So that
Should
Councillor.
we start at the beginning again? The first one is consider the consequences of rezoning or not rezoning in an effort to understand the impacts. and in particular, any benefit associated with the rezoning
To a
as a,
park.
it should be as a park instead of allowing the initiative to proceed. It's allowing a park to proceed with the existing rezoning. That would be fine. Number 2, consider obtaining information regarding the requirement for Metro Vancouver to apply for building permits.
Sorry, it's not existing rezoning, it's existing zoning.
Right. Good point. Consider an OCP update prior to consideration of this rezoning application. The next one would be just simply a recommendation.
Support. We support.
Yeah, well, see, we're not actually going to bring any of these one by one to a vote. That's the problem. But just say consider continuing the thorough consultation with the community. I think they're doing that already a little bit, but wouldn't you say that, Alex? There's a lot of
Currently unmuted.
I'd say there's some consultation going on, but definitely I think with an issue like this, it needs a lot more than what's happened so far.
okay. Consider increasing the thorough consultation with the community.
I'm still unclear on that one. Are we asking council to start embarking on consultation? Or are we asking Metro to do more consultation?
Well, I had it formulated as asking council, but
So they haven't started yet, right? We've only done consultation with Metro so far.
that's yes, that's right. Other than people sending letters and things like that, yeah. So consider the next one would be request that Metro Vancouver establish a policy related to assisting small communities, specifically Bowen Island, in dealing with the impacts of region. So that would be consider requesting that Metro Vancouver establish.
Okay, sorry, continue requesting.
Yep.
Consider requesting. That, okay, Metro.
And the next one is request a response from BC Ferries and TransLink regarding transportation improvements to mitigate impacts of increased number of visitors. Almost want to say insist on, but consider following up on a response.
Oh, follow up on a response?
Yeah, so consider following up on a response, for a response. Okay, and the next one can be consider alternatives for travel from the mainland to the island. For travel from the mainland to the island. And and you take the be considered out at the end, right? Okay. Whew. Next page. Consider what we really need is more. Consider obtaining more accurate information. I don't know. I know some numbers have been thrown around, but
Could there be a projection?
yeah, actually, I was thinking about information regarding the consequences of loss of tax rate. Bowen Island is if the rezoning does not occur. No, regarding the I'll leave it at that. I think they know what
I
we're
think
talking about. One
projections
thing that we
would
don't
work.
have is we know what it is for the vacant land. Alex, you had your hand up. Alex? No, okay.
So does
You could maybe insert property tax. Consequence. belong to
Property tax revenue.
Yeah, I think we should say property tax revenue to Bowen. and you could say the consequences of loss of future property tax revenue, and that'll cover if the development would have proceeded. Okay.
Okay, were the development to proceed?
No, you don't need to say that. A future will cover that. I mean, we want more. Okay.
Michael, I was just going to say, I know that the Finance Advisory Committee on Monday, they discussed it, and the CFO had brought essentially a spreadsheet to that meeting.
Okay.
So it might
Okay.
just be like considering the consequence of the loss of future tax revenue, if that's the
Okay, just start off that. Consider the consequences. Okay.
if that's the recommendation.
And I see Lydia had her hand up. Sorry, it's hard to. You're so small on my screen here, and then Daniel. So, who wants to go first?
It's Lydia speaking from Metro Vancouver. I was just hoping to give a little bit of clarity around public engagement process. So that was our round one. We're still in round one of public engagement. That ends in about a week's time, Monday, the 20th at midnight. At the minute, there are at least another 2 rounds of public engagement planned. So there'll then be some concept development and then kind of final concepts. In each of those phases, there may be further iterations as well. So the engagement that we're in at the minute isn't the whole engagement. It is kind of step 1 of at least 3 phases of engagement. I would like to just mention as well, for Metro Vancouver, we engage with the community, so the community of Bowen Island, regional residents, First Nations, and stakeholders at each of those project phases as well. Thank you.
Okay.
I just wanted to give a little bit of clarity.
Okay, thank you for that, Lydia. And Daniel, did you have something to add?
Oh no, that was it. Yeah.
Okay. You know what? The next one,
Sorry,
details of why
could
certain
I just ask a quick question, if it's okay?
Sure.
I was just wondering, this is a question for Lydia. Are the results of all that consultation being shared with council, with our council?
Yes, so they haven't been shared yet because we're still midstream. But as I understand, we are going to share raw data from the public engagement. As you can imagine, there's quite a bit of data that's outputted as well. We, of course, for regional politicians, need to look at regional focus as well as the local focus. So in the feedback form, one of the very first questions was trying to understand whereabouts people were from in the Metro Vancouver region, then whether or not people lived on Bowen Island, and then even a kind of at that neighborhood level of whereabouts on Bowen Island people lived. So the intent of that is that the data can be like synthesized in all manner of ways. So quite what the roll-up of that will look like, I don't know, because we haven't reached the end. But yeah, absolutely. And the intent is that it will be, there'll of course be summary statements and sharing the raw data with Bowen Island municipality as well. Thank you.
Okay, good, thank you. The next one is one that I came up with, and I'm just going to we suggest we delete it. I can do that reading myself, for the details of why certain areas of the proposed park were designated environmentally sensitive. So why don't we just take that one out? How are we doing there, Steph?
Oh, good. I felt like I just wanted to add to Lydia's, for Brenda's benefit, that mayor and council are asking for, they want to hear from you directly, not just through Metro. So that's, even though all the great information that Metro is getting, they are seeking your direct input
Okay.
to them. It's been
Good. Consider strategies for protecting environmentally sensitive areas. Okay. Consider an all-season species inventory to identify any rare and endangered species, as well as identifying their habitats within the proposed park area. consider a joint management agreement be established between municipal and MV to prevent a repeat. I don't know. I think the problem with that one, the latter part of that one, is it reaches a conclusion. Yes, Betty.
I was the one that asked that, and what I'm really talking about is not just for Cape Roger Curtis, but for all of the metro parks, which means Crippen and Cape Roger Curtis.
Okay. Yeah, otherwise you're
We're just
expressing
doing
an
scratch
opinion
notes.
that may not be shared by everybody in the committee, but for parks on Bowen Island. That's good.
This is, the name of the file is Scratchpad. I'm just trying to capture. So how
Consider
about,
establishing a joint management agreement between, you've got an extra B in there,
Mhm.
between BIM and Metro Vancouver for all of Metro Vancouver parks on the island. Although I think we have listed them. I think those are the only. Consider alternative access to the park. And I think we might want to expand that one. Consider alternative vehicular and foot access.
I gotta put proposed in there. It's not a park yet.
Oh, okay. And finally,
Sorry, what alternative to what?
oh, I see. Maybe we just need to say, well, it's alternative to White Sails Drive, obviously, but
Well,
maybe we
then we
just say
should say-
consider vehicular and
say
foot
that.
access to the proposed park. Consider all aspects of vehicular and foot access to the proposed park.
Yeah,
I think it's specific though to, I think it's specific to White Sails Drive, that's the huge issue.
No, I agree. Those are certainly those are the people I'm hearing from.
why not say consider all aspects of vehicular and foot access to the proposed park, and in particular, White Sails Drive.
Okay, sure.
Good point.
Gonna put something like impact to White Sail Drive.
Yes, thank you.
Rather than saying,
Even better.
yeah.
In particular, the impact to White Sails Drive.
Okay.
And it's residents or like, so it's the road itself or the neighborhood?
Well,
Both.
I think we mean
Yeah, they're
everything.
both.
I
The
think
roads in
it's
Terrebonne.
what literature used to call metonymy, where you the particular stands for the general, such as Ottawa announced today.
Why
Anyway.
does that mean?
You don't like metonymy? Okay.
Is this what you want? What do we want written here?
White Sails Drive. Well, actually, there are really two issues. One is that
Is the
road
road
is
infrastructure.
and its
Right, so maybe-
residents.
Yeah.
So do people want that?
White Sails Drive and its residents.
Yeah.
I'm fine with that.
Okay.
So like put in brackets, road infrastructure and residents, or is that
Sure.
Yeah, that's good. That makes it clear.
impact on residents?
Okay. And then
You guys have a
Consider-
long list of considerations.
okay. Consider clarifying how
Couldn't we just say clarification of how?
well, I just say clarifying the current municipally managed parkland on the Cape consider clarifying how the current municipal managed parkland on the Cape may be
Will-
affected or will be affected by Metro Vancouver Parkland. Okay. Wow. So there's a nice little shopping list.
We haven't talked at all about emergency services and the effect of the park on
Fire.
fire, police, ambulance.
Okay, that's next
fine.
then. Consider effect on emergency services of the, consider the effect of the park on emergency services, such yeah. On the, okay, proposed park. Oh, yeah. I guess I guess it is still
Like
just
a
proposed.
legend. No murder has taken place
Emergency
yet.
services, and I don't know if you want to say police, fire, whatever, ambulance. I think people
It's
know what
pretty
we mean.
straightforward.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, I think this is a list that council probably is generating something very similar for themselves already, but they referred it to us, and this is what we did.
Mhm.
So can we go back to the preamble? And I just want to make sure I've.
I'd like to get it sort of just something I can track as a you agree to disagree kind of thing. So it's like a resolution, but within the resolution, you're saying that.
Okay, why don't we have a motion?
So whereas.
No, you know what I was going to suggest is that the motion could be simply that we place before council all the individual suggestions. The suggestions of the following individual suggestions.
Okay, that's great. As a group, we put forth these suggestions by individual members. This has a precedent. The Housing Advisory Committee did this a couple years ago. It worked.
Yeah. So basically, we're not. I don't want to put we haven't really had the kind of discussion that you would need to have
okay.
The commission endorsed. Now, Brenda, you have your hand up there.
Thank you. Yeah, I just had my hand up because there's a really important issue that we haven't discussed yet, and that is the potential impact of the park on water out there.
All right.
And when we mentioned fire, that got me thinking about that. And there's like the building of trails through there, the kinds of surfaces that they may have, buildings, etc. It all has the potential to affect the water table out there. And that's actually quite important because that's what all the ecosystems, that's why they're in the state that they're in, is because they have a certain water supply. So that's a lot of thoughts to capture in one recommendation or one consideration. But I think we'd be remiss for not mentioning that because water is critically important to that area for sustaining the rare species that are present, both flora and fauna, as well as having enough water out there to fight a fire.
Yeah, I don't think we want to say degradation. Again, I'm trying to avoid reaching conclusions here, but where I thought you were headed, Brenda, is another slightly different point, and that is the potential impact on the water available for consumption.
Well, yes, but I'm actually trying to address something that is not about us human beings, but
I know. I think they're two different things. They are two different things.
Yeah.
So take out degradation, just effect it may have.
Okay.
Sorry, we can have these fights later if you like.
Well,
discussions.
I hope I'm not fighting with anyone.
No, I'm just kidding. Getting a little.
One thing that comes to mind for me is the 24 lots are already, they can go ahead anytime and have houses and secondary dwellings. They need water, all that kind of stuff. So are we looking at all this as compared to bare land or compared to 24 sold lots?
Yeah, I think compared to 24 sold lots, but they've been on the market for a while now and they haven't sold yet. And many of the houses aren't used full time, but yeah, I'm meaning as compared to the development that's allowed there.
Okay. Yeah, that raises a whole issue that we really don't have time to get into today, and that is there are the 24 lots right now. There is a potential for a rezoning for density. But I think what the potential impact of the process by the water table cover and the effect it may have on flora and fauna and on a supply of drinking water and on the supply of drinking water.
I don't know if I can help add a little bit of clarity, but often you refer to the baseline, which there's the current condition, 24 undeveloped lots. And then there's the base case, which is kind of the current intended use of the land, i.e. 24, RR1 with accessory dwellings. So kind of when you look to analyze a lot of the impacts, you often look to the base case, which is what the land is currently intended for.
Yeah. And that, Lydia, thanks for that, because one of the things that I was thinking, this is going to council on April 27th. I think we might have time to have further discussion if people are up for it.
Sorry, is that what Daniel said? April 27th?
Daniel?
I think we've said April. So there's an April 11th meeting and an April 27th meeting.
Okay, so it'd be April 11th or the 27th. I don't know. Well, firstly,
It's depending on the rest of the committee referrals.
Yeah.
A few of them still need to be scheduled, but we're trying for the 11th.
So you're reluctant to add another one, I can tell.
I would love to, but there's a timeline to get in.
Okay, you know what? This is going to come back to us. I think baseline issues are important and will have to be considered as we go forward, whether it's traffic or the current development or the potential for development other than a park. But my goodness, I think we've done really good work so far. I hope council is grateful that we've added so much to their workload. Right, Alex?
Alex has had his hand up for a while, actually.
He has. I keep asking about him, but I think Alex, did you have something to say or?
Oh yeah, no. I don't have anything to add. But no, I do appreciate all the work that you guys have been putting into this. It is much appreciated.
Okay, well, thank you for that. And okay, so can we go back to the top to the actual motion?
Okay, to the top. From the top. We're reading out loud.
Why don't you read the preamble out loud? Yeah.
That the Advisory Planning Commission placed before council the following suggestions from individual members of the APC brought forward. No.
Yeah, that we better clean that up.
You wanted me to find it myself.
You know what? It's just following suggestions from individual members of the APC. And just leave it at that.
Yeah.
Regarding
Metro Vancouver application for rezoning. 1. Maybe I'll number them. Consider the consequences of rezoning or not rezoning in an effort to understand the impacts and in particular any benefit associated with the rezoning to a park instead of allowing a park to proceed with the existing zoning. Consider obtaining information regarding the requirement for Metro Vancouver to apply for building permits. Consider an OCP update prior to consideration of this rezoning application. Consider increasing the thorough consultation with the community such that the community has sufficient time and opportunity to consider and express its views on the proposed rezoning. Consider requesting that Metro Vancouver establish a policy related to assisting small communities, specifically Bowen Island, in dealing with the impacts of regional visitors. Consider following up for a response from BC Ferries and TransLink regarding transportation improvements to mitigate impacts of increased numbers of visitors. Consider alternatives to travel from the mainland to the island and alternate docking and route locations. Docking locations and route. Consider the consequences of the loss of future property revenue for Bowen Islanders. Consider strategies for protecting environmentally sensitive areas. Consider an all-season species inventory to identify any rare and endangered species, as well as identifying their habitats within the proposed park area. Consider establishing a joint management agreement between Bowen Island Municipality and Metro Vancouver for all Metro Vancouver parks on Bowen Island. Consider all aspects of vehicular and foot access to the proposed park, and in particular impact to White Sails Drive road infrastructure and residents. Consider clarifying how the current municipally managed parkland on the Cape may be affected by Metro Vancouver parkland. Consider effects of the proposed park on emergency services, including police, fire, and ambulance. And consider the potential impact of the proposed park on the water table of Cape Roger Curtis and the effect it may have on flora and fauna and on the drinking water supply.
Okay.
We have a
and
mover.
Do we have a mover?
Ooh,
Okay, that was Richard, I think.
Yeah,
And a seconder? Oh, I think Betty beat Brenda by like a hair.
Nick can go, I don't care.
same initials.
Doesn't matter. I don't think your name's okay. Call the question. Those in favor? Anyone opposed? Wow, good work, guys. And Lydia, thanks for stepping into the whatever.
Firing zone?
I'm trying to be diplomatic here.
No, well, thank you. Thank you for inviting me and allowing me to attend tonight. And I'm sure this will be the first meeting of many. And yeah, just moving forward, we're happy to work through Daniel and Council at Bowen. And, you know, if members would like a site tour at some point in the future, I know that many of you are familiar, but we can probably rustle some of our staff experts in biology to kind of give a closer look at the land. We're totally open to that. But yeah, happy to work with the municipality and all their committees on this. So thank you.
Thank you for that. I see Alex and then Betty.
Currently unmuted.
I just wanted to say thank you, Lydia, for being here. Thank you to the APC for all the work that you have done on this. And thank you to all the community staff who are working on this as well.
And you're welcome. Betty.
I also appreciate all of you and Lydia for coming. I have one question I want to ask just because you're here. All the advertising about this park includes access to the beach. Can you tell me what beach that is?
thank you.
Like there isn't a beach in the park, and I think that's why part of the confusion about are they taking over the Cape Roger Curtis beach?
Thanks for the question. Sorry, I'm not familiar of the advertisements that have got the beach.
Okay, pretty much all the press releases talk about access to the beach. Lots of the materials do.
It may refer to waterfront access, and I think it is important to make this distinction. There's kind of there's a viewscape. There's a viewscape.
Yeah, because if people think they're coming with their floaties and their swimming gear, they're going to be disappointed.
Yeah, no, I understand that looking at the coastline. So
it's
yeah, I'm
pretty
not
rough.
familiar of the text. I know it's a question we have asked in the feedback form, and I know it's always interesting to understand the intent of people, if you see what I mean, if people are wanting to swim. So it has been something we've asked. We're not getting, as I understand, sort of huge response because we don't see significant water access. I think the water access is certainly the viewscape, kind of having the viewscape rather than the physical access.
Thanks.
Well, you can take that back to the powers that be. That clarification would be
brilliant. Thanks for that.
Yeah, you're right. It's my goodness, it would be suicidal entering the water.
But it does beg the question then, people looking for the place to go swimming, what impact will the park have?
Well, you know, I think it also gives rise to the issues related to environmentally sensitive areas. You know, anyway, but you're right. That's wow. Okay. Does anyone have any final comments? Any new business? can I request a motion to adjourn? Oh, no, you know what we didn't cover off is the possibility of another meeting. Steph, are you just saying it's just not
Yeah,
possible
of course. Oh, not of course, but
I don't know. What do people think?
That's staff
Would people like another meeting to go further into what we've done so far, or can we just let it go to council knowing that it will come back to us probably 3 or 4 times?
I think all right with waiting a little bit because stuff will come back from the other groups too. The other
Yeah.
committees.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, you're right. And I would like to see, yeah, it would be very helpful. I mean, of course, you're all citizens of Bowen Island and you're all entitled if there's something you want to say to council to do so. So why don't we leave it at that? I'm very curious to see what the other people being referred to come up with. And then Steph will have one less meeting to schedule.
I was just gonna say, I'm looking through, we're also hitting budget time, so I actually don't have, got 5 o'clock, 7 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 7 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 7 o'clock booked. This is yellow across the month, but when we get into sort of, or something on April 5th, but yeah, nothing that. Well, why don't we see, if you guys can just reach out if you feel the need.
Yeah, no, I think Betty's got a really good point, is that it would be very helpful to have the guidance of other committees, and we may save some time with that in hand. So thank you, everybody. My goodness, is somebody willing to make a motion to adjourn? If you don't, I will.
Somebody's gotta do this. You also keep talking.
Brenda, thank you.
I'll move that we adjourn, and I'd also like to thank you very much, Michael, for being very inclusive in how you approached the meeting tonight. I really appreciated that.
You're welcome. I understand that there are differing views on the table. So
You do a terrific job, Michael.
well, thank you. My goodness. Motion to adjourn does not require a seconder, and there's no discussion permitted. So I'm going to call the vote.
Okay.
In favor of adjournment.
Yes.
Sounds unanimous to me. Thank you, everybody. Steph,
Thank
Daniel,
you.
Lydia, Alex. Thank you. Bye now.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Good
Thank
night.
you.
Currently unmuted.